I looked back because I heard a click, and that's when I saw the fishing line stretched across the trail at throat height, vibrating like someone had just let go. I'm writing this because when people talk about the dangers in the woods, they mean bears, cliffs, weather. Nobody tells you the scariest thing you can run into out there is a human being who doesn't want witnesses. This was in the Cherokee National Forest in Tennessee. I was doing a solo day hike, nothing extreme, nothing survival, just a few hours to clear my head. I had a small pack, a cheap first aid kit, 2 bottles of water and the kind of confidence you only get when you've done the same thing 100 times without anything going wrong. The trail was normal at first, wet leaves, dark dirt, that clean cold smell you get when the sun hasn't burned off the morning damp yet. The only sound was my own steps and the occasional creak noise somewhere down in the trees. Every now and then, I'd stop and do the casual look back people do when they're alone, just to make sure I wasn't being followed by a dog or a person. About 40 minutes in, I came to a section where a big limb had come down across the path. It wasn't dramatic, no tornado debris, no snapped trunks, just enough that you either climbed over it or stepped around it. I stepped around it, and that's the moment I think about the most, because it was maybe 10 feet off the trail. 10. I didn't bushwhack, I didn't explore, I just took the lazy way round. I felt something brush my chest, so light I thought it was a spider web, and then I heard that click. When I turned back, I saw it, a thin clear line stretched between 2 trees, right where my throat would have been if I'd taken one more step. Not thick rope, not obvious cord, fishing line, the kind you wouldn't see unless the light hit it just right, and it was moving. Not swaying in the wind, twitching, like a string that had just been released, like a hand had been holding tension on it, and then let go. My stomach dropped so fast it felt like my whole body went cold. I did the slowest thing I've ever done in my life. I looked down. There was a second line, lower, near shin height, angled slightly. Like if the top one didn't get you, the lower one would tangle you. A full line. I stood there frozen, trying to keep my breathing quiet, because the second realization hit me right after the first. This wasn't a prank. It was a place where someone expected a person to pass. I swallowed and forced myself to scan the ground. The leaves were disturbed in narrow strips, like someone had dragged branches over them to hide footprints. But the cuts in the brush weren't random. They were clean, deliberate. And when the breeze shifted, I caught a smell I couldn't place at first, sharp and sour, like fertilizer or chemicals. Then I noticed something else. A tiny piece of reflective tape, no bigger than a fingernail, stuck to a branch about shoulder height. The kind of thing you'll use to mark a route at night. I remember thinking, that's an alarm, not electronic, visual. Something that tells someone the line got hit. My heart started pounding so hard I felt it in my teeth. I did another look back, slow, careful, because I needed to know if someone was behind me. And that's when I saw him. Not close, not right in my face. Further back down the trail, half hidden behind a tree, like he'd chosen a spot where he could see me clearly but I couldn't see all of him. The worst part was that he wasn't moving like someone who'd been surprised. He was just there, like he'd been waiting for exactly this moment. He wasn't wearing a bright hiking shirt, no pack, no trekking poles, just dark clothes and something on his head. Maybe a cap, maybe a hood. I couldn't see his face well enough to describe it, but I could tell he was looking straight at me. I didn't wave, I didn't call out, I didn't ask if he needed help, because in that moment, the woods felt different. The normal bird noise wasn't gone, but it was thinner, like the forest was holding its breath. I backed up, stepping exactly where I stepped before, keeping my eyes on the line so I didn't hit it again. I wanted to run so badly my legs were shaking, but my brain was screaming the same thing over and over. If you run, you trip. If you trip, you're on the ground. I got back onto the trail, put the downed limb between me and the tripwire area, and then I walked fast, but controlled, like I was just another hiker who decided to turn around. I didn't look back again until I'd put a bend in the trail between us. When I finally did, the man was gone. I made it to the trailhead and my hands were shaking so badly I dropped my keys twice. When I got my car door open, I climbed in and locked it like that would protect me from someone who could set traps in the woods. I sat there for a full minute just breathing, staring at the trees. Then I did something I almost didn't do. I reported it. I called the ranger station number listed for the area and told them exactly what happened. Fishing line across a trail, possible booby trap, suspicious person, chemical smell, reflective tape marker. The woman on the phone went quiet in a way that made my skin prickle. She asked me to repeat the location, mile estimate, landmarks, which direction from the trailhead. Then she said, very calmly, "Stay in your vehicle, do not go back in, deputies may contact you." When the ranger finally called me back, she didn't sound shocked. That's what scared me the most. She asked if I touched anything, if I'd taken photos, if I seen vehicles I couldn't place. Then she said the line I still can't get out of my head. "We don't patrol that sector alone." I tried to laugh it off like, "What do you mean sector? Like it was a military zone." But she didn't laugh. She just told me I did the right thing by leaving, and the wrong thing by stepping off trail. Her voice was firm, almost like she said it before to someone who didn't listen. That night, when I got home, I dumped my pack out on my living room floor. Dirt, wrappers, my little first aid kit, and on the very bottom, stuck to the fabric like it had been pressed there, was a small strip of reflective tape, the same kind I'd seen on the branch. I stared at it for a long time, trying to convince myself it was mine. It wasn't, and that's when it hit me. The trip line wasn't there to keep me out. It was there to make sure I didn't leave fast. If you've never dealt with real people in the woods, you would think they'll rush you. They don't. The next story is the first time I realized the trail can be watched, like an aisle in a convenience store. I found a camp in the woods that wasn't messy or desperate. It had shells, it had labels, and it had a notebook titled, in neat handwriting, "Return Rate." This happened in Kentucky, in the Daniel Boone National Forest, near the kind of rugged terrain people go to when they want cliffs, arches, and quiet. The Red River Gorge area is beautiful in that way that makes you feel safe, like nature itself is the only thing you need to worry about. I was wrong. I was hiking alone because, well, I like hiking alone. No one to match pace with, no one to talk to, just me, my water, and the sound of the woods. Late afternoon, I took what I thought was a small connector, one of those faint footpaths that look like it leads to an overlook. The light was already turning golden, and I told myself I'd go just a little way, snap a photo and come back. Within 5 minutes, the trail didn't look like a trail anymore. It looked like repeated use, flattened leaves, broken twigs, but no official markings. That should have been my sign to turn around. Then I smelled smoke. Not campfire smoke from some friendly group, bin smoke, like someone had kept a fire going for a long time and didn't want it to be seen. I followed it without thinking, because my brain went to the safest explanation first. Someone needs help, someone's lost, someone's injured. I pushed through a patch of brush and stepped into the clearing. It wasn't big, it wasn't dramatic, but it was wrong in a way that took my breath away. There were 3 sleeping areas made of flattened cardboard and tarps. There was a cooking spot, rigged perfectly with stones. There was a line strung between 2 trees with gear hanging from it like a stored display. Backpacks, jackets, even a hiking pole. And there were shelves, wooden shelves nailed into a crude frame under a tarp roof, like a pantry. The shelves were stocked with food, granola bars, ramen, canned stuff, electrolyte packets, all organised by type. Some of it looked old, some of it looked new, like it had been taken recently from people who were still out there hiking. My skin went cold when I saw the row of wallets, not scattered, not dumped like trash, placed carefully, like lost and found, and beside them, a notebook. I didn't want to touch it, I didn't want to leave my fingerprints, but I opened it anyway, because curiosity is a disease and it got me into trouble. On the first page, in clear handwriting, return rate. Under it were columns, dates, little notes. Solo male, mid-30s, carried bear spray, turn back. Couple, stay close, no return. Solo female, fast pace, return next day. Group of 4, loud, avoided. I stared at those words and felt my mouth go dry. Because return next day didn't mean the person came back for their keys. It meant they came back into the woods. It meant whoever wrote this expected people to come back. I flipped another page and saw something worse. Little marks beside names, like a scoring system. I heard a twig snap behind me. I froze so hard it felt like my spine locked. Then I heard another snap, but not in the same place, off to my right, deeper into the trees. That's when I realized something I should have realized earlier. This clearing wasn't hidden, it was placed. It was close enough to a trail to catch people, but far enough that you wouldn't stumble into it by accident. I backed up slowly, eyes scanning the shadows under the trees. And then I did the thing you do when you're alone and your instincts are screaming at you. I looked back down the faint path I came in on. For 1 second, I saw a person step behind a tree. Not a hiker, no pack, no bright clothing, just a dark shape that moved smoothly and then stopped. And I understood the worst part. They weren't startled to see me. They were waiting to see what I'd do. I didn't run, I didn't yell, I didn't pretend I was tough. I just started walking back the way I came, forcing myself to keep my pace even. But the sound followed me. Not footsteps right on my heels, not a chase, just 2 sets of quiet movement, one behind, one angled off to the side, like they were keeping distance while still controlling where I went. Every time I tried to speed up, something would shift ahead, branches moving, a shape repositioning. It felt like herding. My throat burned from trying to breathe quietly. When I finally saw the main trail, I almost cried. I stepped onto it and kept walking like nothing happened, because I didn't want anyone watching to know I was scared. When I reached the trailhead, there were other cars, other people, the normal world again. I got in my car and I drove away, and the whole way home I kept checking my mirrors, because I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been logged. I called it in later, because I couldn't live with myself if someone else walked into that clearing and didn't walk back out. The ranger I spoke to listened, asked for coordinates, asked for descriptions, asked if I could identify anything. Then he said something that told me he believed me without having to say it. Do not go back. If it's what you think it is, it won't be handled like a lost hiker situation. That night, I convinced myself it was over, until I found my hiking photo from earlier, before the camp, saved on my phone. It wasn't the photo I took, It was a photo of me from behind, walking on the trail, like someone had taken it from the trees. I thought the worst thing you could find out there was a camp. I was wrong. The worst thing is realizing they don't always need you alone. Sometimes they wait until you're surrounded by people and nobody wants to admit they're scared. Every insect sound stopped at once, not faded, stopped, and then I heard some slow footsteps circling the shelter, like whoever was outside was counting us. This was in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, on a section where shelters are normal. People plan for them, talk about them, feel safer because other hikers will be there. That's what makes this story so disturbing, because there were other people there. I was doing a long weekend section hike. By the time I reached the shelter, it was late enough that the light had that grey-blue look that makes everything feel colder than it is. The shelter was already crowded, packs lined up, boots arranged, people eating quietly. There was one guy sitting slightly apart. He barely spoke. He didn't look at anyone directly. At first, I thought he was just tired, but then I heard him say, under his breath, "Don't leave your pack outside." Someone laughed and said, "Bears?" The guy shook his head once, slow. "No," he said, "not bears." That got my attention, but I didn't push it. Hikers have weird superstitions, people exaggerate. We all settled in as the night got darker. I remember the smell of sweaty socks mixed with ramen and damp wood. Someone's headlamp kept flickering as they tried to find a charging cable. Normal stuff. Then, sometime after midnight, it happened. Everything outside went quiet. Not the normal late-night quiet where the woods calm down. It was like someone had thrown a blanket over the forest. Even inside the shelter, people shifted, like we all felt it at the same time. And then I heard it, a step on wet leaves, slow, soft, not boot crunch. A second step, then another, and they weren't coming closer. They were moving sideways, circling. I sat up, heart hammering, and looked at the other people. In the dim light, I could see eyes open. I could see someone's hand slowly reaching for their headlamp, and then stopping, like they didn't want to turn it on. The footsteps continued, steady, patient, like whoever it was had all night. Then something brushed the shelter wall. Not a bare paw, not a heavy stove, a light touch, dragging along the wood. A test. A man near the front whispered, "Hello?" No answer. The quiet outside felt heavy, like sound couldn't travel. The guy who warned us earlier leaned forward and whispered, "Don't talk to them." "Who?" someone mouthed. He didn't respond. I wanted to look out the opening, but I didn't want to be the first person to make the move. Finally, someone did. A woman slowly angled her headlamp towards the entrance, just enough for a thin beam to cut through the darkness. We all held our breath. The beam hit a tree trunk a few feet away, then shifted and caught something low to the ground, just for a second, before it slipped behind the tree. Not an animal shape, a person, crouched, watching. A woman jerked the beam back and instantly the steps stopped, like the movement was controlled, like they didn't want to be seen moving. We sat there for what felt like an hour, listening to nothing, too scared to sleep. Then, in the darkness, I heard another sound. Something small being dragged across the ground. A zipper. Someone's pack. We all froze. A guy reached forward and grabbed his backpack handle so fast it made the fabric snap. The sound echoed weirdly in the shelter, like the woods were amplifying it. Outside, There was a pause, then the footsteps resumed, faster now, but still circling, not rushing, testing. I remember thinking, they're seeing what we'll do. At some point, quiet lifted just a little, like the forest slowly started breathing again. Insects returned, faintly, the pressure in my ears eased, and around that time, the footsteps faded, not running away, just leaving. At first light, nobody spoke much. People packed up fast like the shelter was on fire. When we stepped outside, the ground around the shelter was disturbed in a ring. Flattened leaf litter, scuffed dirt, but the tracks weren't clear, almost like someone had brushed them. And one more thing was missing, a single boot. Just one, not both, one boot, gone from beside a pack. That's when I realized what the warning guy meant. It wasn't bears, it was people. And the scariest part is I don't think they wanted food. I think they wanted to see who panicked first.